Last video, I promise. I guess one of the problems of doing this through the webcam rather than doing it from my camera, the digital camera, is that it's much easier to do it this way, technically. So I seem to be making more videos, but I will promise both that this is the last one and that next week we'll be back to the other format, just to keep me disciplined, which I think is a good thing. Because let's face it, teachers talk too much. That's something they have to watch. I just want to look at the last part of the reading, the two excerpts I gave you from the same book. Everything that we've talked about here comes from a book called Outlines of Pyrrhonism. Pyrrho, or Pyrrho, being the sort of founder of skepticism, of ancient skepticism. So Pyrrhonism being a school of philosophy, skeptical philosophy, based upon the name of this man, Pyrrho. So again, from a lot of chapters of Outlines of Pyrrhonism in Book 2, he has something to say about syllogisms, and he has something to say about induction, and they're very closely related points. His criticism, or his critique of the syllogism, of the kind of circular reasoning that's involved in any syllogism of the classical sort, the ones that we're familiar with. All men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Or the one that he uses, which is the exact same form, every man is an animal, but Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is an animal. Major premise, minor premise, conclusion. And what is his criticism of the syllogism? It certainly isn't a logical criticism. It's not a criticism about what statements can actually be deduced from other statements. So if we consider the syllogism just as a logical form, has nothing to do with any claims about the way the world is, then I think that Sextus has no critique of the syllogism. But what is he actually critiquing? He's critiquing the syllogism as a form of reasoning that's valid for finding truth, the way the world actually is. That is, starting with premise that every man is an animal, and starting with a second premise that Socrates is a man, deriving a true statement from that. Socrates is an animal. So what is his problem with that? Well, I mean, his problem with that seems to be that if you take a syllogism as a way of finding truth, then you will inevitably be involved in circular reasoning. He says in that excerpt, this particular proposition, that Socrates is an animal, conclusion, is actually what establishes the universal proposition that all men are animals. And it does so, as he mentioned, by the inductive method. Hence, anybody who uses a syllogism as a way of finding truth, fall into circular reasoning, since they're using each of the particular propositions to establish the universal proposition inductively, and deducing each of the particular propositions from the universal by means of the syllogism. That is, in the syllogism itself, all men are animals, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is an animal. If we take our conclusion, Socrates is an animal, as being the truth that we have discovered through the syllogism about the world, that truth, Socrates is an animal, depends upon the general statement, universal statement, all men are animals. But how do we know that? Well, he says we know that general statement through induction, through knowing, for instance, that Socrates is an animal, and Dion and Plato and you and me are animals. That is, that the universal statement rests on an inductive foundation which presupposes that we know the particular statements. But the particular statements, the truth of them in the syllogism rests upon the truth of the general statement. That is, the truth of the conclusion that Socrates is an animal rests upon the truth of the general premise that all men are animals. But that itself is established by induction through accepting as true statements like Socrates is an animal. I think that's what he means by circular reasoning, where the premise is supported by the conclusion, and the conclusion is supported by the premise in this case. So one could then, I guess, dismiss syllogisms, which are an example of deductive reasoning as a way of finding truth. But How about induction? I mean, that is that it may be that our syllogism is just a formality, the way it's put. What I mean by that is that we have a general statement, all men are animals, a particular statement, Socrates is a man, and a particular conclusion that Socrates is an animal. But we could admit that our general premise that all men are animals is established inductively, and that we just show that the reverse process, so to speak, of deduction is possible, formally at least. But what about induction? He says in that brief excerpt I gave you from the chapter on induction, he says, it is also easy, I think, to dispose of their method of induction. They claim that the universal, and the universal in this case being all men are animals, is established from the particulars by means of induction. It's very, this goes right to the heart of what Aristotle's getting at in the posterior analytics about how we, through sense experience, come to know the starting points of inquiry. If this is so, they will effect it, they will make it happen by reviewing either all the particulars or only some of them. But if they review only some, their induction will be unreliable, since it is possible that some of the particulars omitted in the induction may contradict the universal. That would go back to a discussion of the apples. It may be on the basis of induction that I conclude, with reason, some reason, that all apples are red. But my conclusion, my universal statement, all apples are red, will be false, because there are non-red apples. I just haven't found any yet. There's always that possibility in induction. A very famous problem of induction is that if you only review some of the particulars, that your conclusion or your general statement will only be partially supported, and there's always the possibility of a disconfirming particular coming up. If, on the other hand, their review is to include all the particulars, that is, if I say, well, I'm going to get rid of this problem of the possible disconfirming particular by reviewing all the particulars, theirs will be an impossible task, because particulars are infinite and indefinite. That is, it's actually impossible to review most of the time, maybe all the time, all of the particulars. Thus, it turns out, I think, that induction, viewed from both ways, rests on a shaky foundation. Well, there it is. I mean, that's, I guess, something to think about. Especially, what is the reflection of this, what Aristotle said about the inductive way that we come to starting points through our sense experience, through sensation and memory and the experience that results from that. It would seem to be pretty crucial for Aristotle's argument and Aristotle's solution to Meno's paradox that we do come to know, that we can actually learn the starting points of inquiry. Certainly that seemed a little bit less extravagant than Aristotle's theory than Plato's solution to the problem, which was to say that the soul is immortal, has already learned all things. So we already know these things, we just need to remember them. We need to have our recollection activated of these things through philosophical questioning. That may turn out to be the best solution to the problem, I don't know, but it certainly seemed in the Meno to be a very extravagant thing to say about there's going to be proof for it, except maybe if we take the proof of the slave boy, Meno. So that's that. I mean, I don't think anything's been resolved, but maybe that was the point. Maybe it's finally the point of the philosophers to say, I don't want to resolve anything. I want to show how everything is essentially unresolved.